Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the one and only DJ Storms. Welcome back to the channel here on YouTube.com. April's flying by pretty quickly. We're already halfway through the month, and I guess that should be considered a refresher to many people. I know a lot of people just want to get through this pandemic, get back to normal lifestyle. I am one of those people. Trust me on that one. I hope everyone has been doing well. If you are in online classes at school, or whichever school you're in, whichever grade you're in, I hope you are doing well. I hope you've been keeping up to date with everything. I myself have had 3 projects to do over the course of the last 6 days. I got a journal assignment done for corporate finance where I journalized a lot of index rates for the stock market. Then I did an accounting information systems project where I analyzed a spreadsheet on Excel. Then I made it into a chart on PowerPoint, and then I wrote a 3-page paper on it explaining my data. Then I did a 3 to 4 page paper on the sustainable business practices of Amazon. So needless to say, my brain is fried as far as that goes, but I'm still here getting the content up for you guys and keeping up to date with the brand. This is my brand, this is my life's work. This brand is my life's work. Of course, I gotta keep up to date with it. If you are working from home, I hope that the productivity has not decreased too much. I hope you've been getting all the things that you need to be getting done. I hope that if you are an essential worker, I hope that the bosses and the customers have been treating you right. I hope the pay has been increased. You guys definitely deserve it. We definitely appreciate each and every single one of you who are going out there and working for the essential businesses. I hope that everything's going well there. Couple things before we start. As always, follow me on Twitter at HistoryMakerDJS. Follow me on Instagram and Periscope at TheDJStorms. I'm going to try and talk with Thunder, and we're going to see if we can organize another Thunderscope. I know we haven't done it in a while. He's been busy. I have been insanely busy with not just the brand in itself, not just analyzing pro wrestling, but organizing schoolwork, making sure I get all those projects done for the semester. I actually still have a 3 to 5 page paper to do on corporate finance, so I have to analyze the stock market and why we should invest in it. Needless to say, it is a major pain in the ass, but I'm back here with another Dark Side of the Ring review. I have been loving the Dark Side of the Ring documentaries. I always say it is the picture-perfect blueprint if you are going to do a wrestling documentary. Of course, add me on Facebook as well. All the links to my social medias are in the description. Episode 3 of Quarantine with Thunder is also up. Apparently, I'm not worthy. What does that mean? Go check it out. The link is in the description. I want you guys to hit that thumbs up. Hit that thumbs up. Try and get this video 20 thumbs up. The views and likes have remained consistent. 100 plus views, 20 plus likes on every single video that I've done since this pandemic has started. You guys have been absolutely killing it. I can't thank you guys enough. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what your thoughts are on this specific episode of Dark Side of the Ring. And of course, hit that subscribe button. We are on the road to 2K. Actually, I did not upload a single thing over the Easter weekend. I did not do a Lightning Flash update, and apparently you guys surprised me with 50 plus subs. I am over 1,800, so I definitely want to thank you guys for that. My Day 1 A1s, the people who are just joining the DJ Storms posse and are just coming around to the brand. You guys know who you are. I can't thank you guys enough. It was definitely a surprise, definitely a sense of positivity that I really needed during this time. And of course, I hope you guys had a very happy and healthy Easter with your family. I did. I know I did. I had a nice dinner, ham and lamb chops and some scalloped potatoes. You can't go wrong with that. You can't go wrong with some scalloped potatoes and stuffed mushrooms. Sorry if I'm making you guys hungry. Of course, subscribe and hit that notifications bell with a huge coup de grace. That way you will know whenever I pop up on YouTube. Because whenever I pop up on YouTube, it's the best time to be on YouTube. I mean, come on, you guys know the drill. You guys know the drill. And of course, you guys are unaware, I am now the new co-host of a podcast. It is called Blue Riot Podcast. And of course, it is created by the Blue Riot himself. Shout out to him. Go follow Blue Riot on Twitter at Blue Riot with 2 T's. Follow Blue Riot Podcast on Twitter at Blue Riot with 2 T's. Pod, P-O-D. The first episode of the Blue Riot Storms review, I came up with that one. Blue Riot Storms review, AEW Darkamite. He came up with Darkamite. That is up on the official podcast on the official podcast page on iTunes and Spotify. Link to the iTunes page is in the description. Go check that out. Subscribe to the podcast as well on iTunes and Spotify. Next episode has been uploaded already. Episode 2 of AEW Darkmite. I definitely want you guys to go and check that one out. We actually talked about being the elite as well. We talked about the upcoming 200th episode. We talked about the TNT Championship tournament. We did the Cody Dig Tally. That's a new segment on the Blue Riot podcast. We're going to see how many times the Blue Riot takes a dig at Cody, and I'm going to tally it up, and by the end of the podcast, we're going to see how many times he took an unnecessary dig at Cody. So if you want some laughs, go listen to the Blue Riot podcast. Link to the podcast on iTunes is in the description. And of course, it's time to get into what you guys came for. Dark Side of the Ring, Jimmy Snuka and the Death of Nancy Ortega review. Now, started off explaining how Jimmy Snuka was this beloved character by the WWF fans at the time. And on screen, he seemed very cool. It's very stereotypical. He seemed cool. He seemed collective. He seemed as if he genuinely appreciated everyone. But behind the scenes, he was off. He was off, and the common trend with a lot of these Dark Side of the Ring reviews and a lot of these Dark Side of the Ring stories is the fact that it tends to go back to drugs. It tends to go back to drugs, and it just goes to show you that there was pretty much no rules back then when it came to the professional wrestling industry back in the 80s and the 90s. You could get away with literally anything. You can get away with snorting coke, you can get away with smoking weed, popping pills, being an alcoholic, being a murderer. I mean, look what happened with the Bruiser Brody story. And Jimmy Snuka was just simply put it, he was a crackhead. He was a crackhead back then. I mean, I don't sugarcoat anything, but yeah, he was a crackhead back then. He was a crackhead back then. He was married, and he had a 22-year-old girlfriend on the road with him, pretty much being his mother more than his girlfriend, driving him around to the events, and the drugs obviously took an effect on him. You know, when you're snorting that much coke and you're usually always high, it's going to fuck with your brain. It's going to fuck with your brain, and that's pretty much what happened. And it sucks. It really does suck what happened to Nancy because of the fact that, you know, she really did love him. She really did love him, and it's tough. When you really love someone, it's really tough to let them go because you want to stick by them, and you want to help them through the toughest times in their life. But it seems as though Nancy was almost a bit too submissive to say something. There was stories of her sisters getting calls from her. Lorraine and Luis, they got calls from her saying that Jimmy was chasing her down the hallway of a hotel, and then the cops showed up, and Jimmy's resisting arrest, fighting off the cops, fighting off the guard dogs. They had a Tonga kid, Sam Fatu, in there. He talked about how great Jimmy was, and more likely than not, he probably was a good guy behind the scenes to his close friends, but at the end of the day, the drugs really fucked him up, and in a sense, he was kind of responsible for his own downfall in that regard. They had also Adam and John Clark, the two men that wrote the 30-year anniversary article in the newspaper on Jimmy Snuka and Nancy Argentino. Who else did they have? They had former sheriff Frederick Conjure, which I will talk about later because I got a lot to say about that. So they had the incident at the Motor City Motel in Allentown, Pennsylvania. And Jimmy Snuka essentially told two different stories. He told the story of him and Nancy getting into an argument at the hotel, and then he apparently shoved Nancy, and Nancy hit her head, and he was neglectant to really care for her. And then he told the story of them driving to Allentown, and it was just him and Nancy. Nancy stopped on the side of the road to use the bathroom, and then she slipped and hit her head. The one thing that caught me off guard was during Nancy's funeral, and Jimmy Snuka showed up in shorts and a tank top saying that she looks horrible. And then the Undertaker at the funeral, he went up to Nancy's family and he basically said, it took us a while to make her look this good, considering that there was bruises and marks all over her body. There was marks on her throat, pretty much implying that Jimmy Snuka may have strangled her and beaten her, and it was kind of a sense of drug rage. It's kind of a sense of drug rage right there. And Jimmy Snuka pretty much abused her. The fact that Jimmy Snuka told two stories really showed us that he really was trying to cover up something. He was really trying to cover up something, and then all of a sudden, the case just stopped. And then 30 years it was reopened because of an autopsy report stating that the cause of Nancy Benoit's death could have been homicide at the hands of Superfly himself. And I was thinking to myself, well, how could this have been? Why did the case just stop? Then we had Sam Fatu and Nancy's family, I believe it was. They were telling stories about how Jimmy Superfly was a top act during that time, during the 80s. And Vince McMahon was really close with them, so much so that Jimmy Snuka called him Brother Vinny. They had Don Morocco in there as well, which was one of, if not Jimmy Superfly Snuka's biggest rivalry. He was telling the story as well. And then we had Sheriff Frederick Conjure come in. And he was basically talking about the entire issue from the beginning, saying there's really no way to prove it. There's really no way to know for sure. The autopsy report resulted in Jimmy Superfly Snuka getting arrested and charged. We then had him being taken into court, and a judge pretty much ruled that his dementia made him incompetent to be held for trial. And it does kind of it's terrible in a sense that Nancy's family will get no justice. And again, Jimmy Superfly Snuka, in a sense, he had no one to blame at that time but himself, because he made the choice to be a crackhead. I don't want to come off as a jerk, but in a sense, he was responsible for this. In a sense, he was responsible for this because he made the choice to snort coke back then, and because of that, his brain was fucked up because of the coke, and he ended up killing his girlfriend. The fact that he tried to tell two stories to cover it up. And then we go to Frederick Conjure, a former sheriff at that time. And the one thing that you could really notice about Frederick when the producers were talking to him and they were interviewing him about this is the fact that he constantly looked up, constantly looked at the side. And more likely than not, that usually means that they're pondering and they're stalling because they don't want to say the wrong thing, or they don't necessarily want to tell the person what specifically happened, or what really happened behind closed doors, if there was an incident behind closed doors. In this case, in my eyes, I believe there was. Especially when Sam Fatu came out saying that Jimmy and Nancy, they took him into the car, and all three of them went to Allentown. And then once they eventually got to Allentown, Jimmy and Nancy went to their room, and Sam went to his room. And then, obviously, the events that took place on May 10th, 1983, took place following that car ride. And the producers asked Sam, did Nancy ever stop to go to the bathroom on the side of the road? And he was saying no. So clearly, if Sam Fatu is telling a different story, signs do point to the fact that Jimmy did abuse his girlfriend, and Jimmy ended up causing her to hit her head, and she died because of the head injury. And going back to what I said about Frederick, the former sheriff at that time, looking up, trying to ponder, trying to stall, makes it seem like there's a sign of deception there. And considering that Jimmy Snuka had a meeting with Vince McMahon and the authorities, and considering how big of a star Jimmy Snuka was at that time, to me at least, it seemed as though the documentary was trying to say, without actually saying it, that Vince McMahon paid off the authorities to close the case because of how big of a star Jimmy Snuka was at that time, and Vince McMahon did not want to lose a money-making star like Jimmy Snuka. And then 30 years later, because of the autopsy report, it was reopened. And, you know, it's definitely not wrong for anyone to think that, especially considering that a promoter called Nancy's family saying, we're sorry about the death of your daughter. Would $25,000 help? I mean, Vince McMahon's a fucking slimeball. It really is. It really does speak to how much of a fucking slimeball that Vince McMahon really is. And Frederick did not do a good job at hiding it. He made Vince McMahon look like a fool. And they couldn't say it for real. They couldn't say it for real on the documentary. Vince McMahon would have probably sued everyone involved in that documentary. In my eyes, all signs pointed to the simple fact that Frederick was paid off by Vince McMahon to stop the case because Vince McMahon saw money in Jimmy Snuka. He realized how valuable Jimmy Snuka was, and that was pretty much it. And it goes back to my report that I was writing, or that I wrote, on the sustainability business practices of Amazon. And there was a tactic that Amazon did, calling into question the recycling program of Amazon. Walmart called in the recycling program of Amazon into question, and Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, did make a public post on Instagram stating that he was donating $10 billion. It was either 10 million or 10 billion. I think it was $10 billion to combat climate change. In a sense, Vince McMahon is doing the stereotypical thing that a lot of businesses do. And to be quite honest, they're still doing it today. And Vince McMahon, to a certain extent, still doing it today. And a lot of businesses nowadays, they throw money at a problem. They throw money at a problem thinking that it will solve it. And for 30 years, it worked. For 30 years, it worked until that autopsy report came out. It's scary to think. It really is scary to think if you're that close with Vince McMahon that he'll literally pay off police officers, literally pay off sheriffs, deputies, and police officers so that way you can pretty much get away with murder. It really does speak to the fact that there is an all-time low. There's always been an all-time low morality in business. It really did catch me off guard. It really did catch me off guard, and this was probably the documentary since the first documentary since the Benoit one that I was really in shock with. New Jack was good. The Brawl for All was good. This one was great. This one really drew you in, just like the Chris Benoit one. Again, as I've stated, Jimmy Snuka was pretty much the cause of his own downfall. He was pretty much the cause of his own downfall. I do feel terrible for Nancy's family, and it sucks that they're never ever going to get justice because of what happened and because of the fact that it came out 30 years later and his dementia pretty much ruled him unfit to be held for trial. Can't really do too much about it, but all you can do is really extend your prayers out to Nancy's family. And that's pretty much it. I don't really know what else to say about that. Vince McMahon, like I've said, Vince McMahon's a slime ball. Vince McMahon's a slime ball. You can't really put it any other way. Jimmy Snuka was a crackhead. He chose to be one. He was a crackhead, and his drugs fucked up his brain, and he killed his girlfriend. And he pretty much neglected her. He didn't really, he was not competent. He was not competent with what he had in front of him. Ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up this edition of Dark Side of the Ring Review. I would like to thank each and every single one of you who tuned into this video. Usual material. Like, comment, subscribe. I will have the Lightning Flash update up for you guys on Saturday. I do have news on a star from SmackDown that is reportedly set for a big push, so he won't go to AEW. Then again, that's every other superstar on the roster nowadays. They're being pushed so they won't go to All Elite Wrestling. It's definitely a nice refresher for me to do these Dark Side of the Ring reviews and to give you guys my thoughts, and opinions on the documentary without any notes, completely out of character, completely toned down, completely down to earth. It's definitely a refresher, and I definitely think it has done the channel very, very well. And I definitely hope you guys have been enjoying these Dark Side of the Ring reviews. Like, comment, subscribe as always. All links to my social media platforms and videos are in the description. I'm the one and only DJ Storms. This has been Dark Side of the Ring, Jimmy Snuka, and the Death of Nancy Argentino review. I hope you guys have a great day, and I will see you guys on Saturday for the Lightning Flash update.